Here are the horoscopes for the week of the 7th to the 13th of July 2025. So we start the week with Uranus moving into Gemini. It's been in Taurus since 2019 or roundabouts that amount of time, so it's normally a 7-year phase. So it's quite a big deal when an outer planet changes signs. It can bring in some very quick and very different energy, a climatic shift. And like the other planets this year as well, Uranus will dip back into Taurus from November to April in the coming year. So we have all the big planets moving signs. Pluto now is going to stay in Aquarius. Saturn and Neptune in Aries are going to dip back into Pisces. And Uranus now in Gemini is going to dip back into Taurus. So seeing the big picture here, we are being prepared for very new territory, for new ways of seeing ourselves, life, interacting with our world. With these retrogrades, we get a small preview, then a chance to go back and make the real adjustments, the deeper adjustments, and then by next year we'll have all of the outer planets at the beginning degrees of air and fire signs all making harmonic angles to each other. So this year feels like a bit of a workshop, fine-tuning, calibrating, giving ourselves a cosmic MOT. But what would Uranus in Gemini be like? Obviously it'll be different for all of us, but Uranus is a visionary, a higher perspective, spiritual aspect, and Gemini is the processing mind, our communication. So from the start I think we'll be hearing, understanding and speaking a lot more pure truth, cutting through the nonsense. Might find ourselves saying things without even really realising that we're saying them, but it comes from a deeper place within. We'll be able to challenge perspective, raise to our higher consciousness and view issues and relationships that have hitherto troubled us on the mundane plane. So flashes of insights, of visions, raising our perception, giving us a more balanced view of things. Gemini being the twins, we're comparing one side with the other, but when we raise up we can see that they're actually connected. Very truthful, very quirky, very rebellious. So have a look where 0 degrees Gemini is in your chart, to tune into which house that's in and see where this might be most influencing you. If you've got that position in the 5th house, you might get sudden bursts of creative flair and independence, not holding back on the lyrics that you write or the way that you express, not caring about other people's validation or following form. If you've got 0 degrees Gemini in the 12th house, you could easily tune into meaningful aspects of previous past lives, or some pure clarity, the spiritual aspect, connection with higher self and source suddenly becomes open. So it really does depend where this is happening for you, but it's very exciting, and even though we'll retro later this year, get a heads up on what it feels like to have Uranus in Gemini. So well aspected by all the other planets. But then the connection immediately with Venus. So Uranus has been travelling through Taurus for 7 years, ruled by Venus, and it's almost like she turns up to see him off. So Venus, the heart, the centre, the presence, creativity, true pure feeling, is often a little bit out of her comfort zone in Gemini, which is all to do with the mind and communication, but can be very good for writers, like I say, in lyrics. But meeting with Uranus, that's where I feel that if we blurt something out, it will probably come from the heart. Might be something that we've held in for a while, not wanted to say to hurt other people's feelings or to be criticised ourselves. But it's a very short-lived aspect, but I think that that's going to kick off this whole phase. So it's the next 7 years of Uranus in Gemini, with a few retrogrades to begin with, tuning us in to being able to rise up, take flight and see things from a higher vantage point, gain wisdom as a result. Also this week on the 10th we have the full moon in Capricorn, 18 degrees if you're looking in your chart, at 21:34 UK time. So full moon in Capricorn can be quite austere, opposite Cancer, can be quite emotional, can bring things from our core self up to the surface emotionally for cleansing. But with so much harmony going on in the skies at the moment, then just wait and see if something from your deep past, from your upbringing, from your very bones comes up to be cleansed, or whether you need to dig deep to find your core and anchor and steady yourself, because something more emotional on the Cancerian side comes up. Then on the 11th, Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, turns retrograde. So that's going to be an inwards step. So something may come up at this full moon in Capricorn that takes you, like the hermit, on a very internal journey to find your roots, your core strength, your dignity, authenticity. So Saturn turning retrograde pops back into Pisces in September. We'll be back into Aries by next January. So the outer planets have long retros. Neptune's just turned retrograde as well. So the rest of this year, really into early spring next year, is a very inward journey to really find our true knowing, our sovereignty, to make necessary adjustments and to shore ourselves up. But talking of retrogrades, we're actually in the first phase of Mercury retrograde this week as well. So with Uranus turning retro, in the first phase of Mercury retro, this is very much to do with the mind and communication, ideas and inspiration. So we're tracking Mercury back from 15 to 4 degrees Leo, and that will be making an opposition to Pluto. So a lot to take on board this week, but we know what Mercury retrograde represents. It's going in and changing our mind, and it's just amazing that with Uranus going into Gemini, that's the higher octave, that will actually be made very obvious and very easy. So where do you need to find higher perspective? Where do you need to exit the old paradigm? Where do you need to think bigger? Are you able to make changes to your perceptions and your beliefs, or are you too attached to them? Have they become part of you and your personality? Because if that's the case, they will be challenged by others. So it's often a lot more comfortable that we go in and do that challenging ourselves. The actual retrograde of Mercury will be on the 18th. So first phase, see where it is in your chart, see what's coming up for you to make those adjustments. Things happen slightly differently, slightly out of our logical control, but there's a lot of room for magic at this time when we do things differently, see things differently, take different journeys, meet different people, try new things, or go back to something that we've already started. That's something that Mercury retrograde is really good for. If you've started something and it's fallen by the wayside, it's perfect time to go back and revisit, revise, revitalise. And in Leo, that is creativity and expression. So all told, a very busy week. Lots of movements, mostly backwards, except for Uranus changing sign. Our rebel is on the march, firing up our heart-meeting Venus. The full moon in Capricorn with Saturn turning takes us deeply inwards. And Mercury retrograde, first phase, starts to light the candles of awareness, show us the sparks that are about to fly and what part of our world needs attention. So if you'd like to see where any of this is for you, I am available zoeastro7@gmail.com for readings, including tarot and numerology, recorded MP3 and customised to exactly what you're requiring. I have courses, Tarot Beginners, Tarot and Astrology, Numerology, a full 13-module astrology course, but you can cherry pick those modules if you want to fill in any gaps of your knowledge. And I also offer coaching, because as we're on such an inward clearing phase of our collective evolution, then there's certain practical tips and practices that I can share with you to really get to the roots of anything that you're ready to release. So keep a sense of humour handy this week. Yours moving into Gemini could be quite funny, and Mercury retrograde also requires a bit of a sense of humour as well. Once we loosen up, we make room for the magic to happen, not having to micro-control the future, but going more with the flow, noticing different things, acting differently, and attracting differently as a result. So take this week day by day, be ready to make changes, be observant enough to see the signs that show you what changes need to be made as we enter a very retrospective and retrograde busy part of the year. So those are the horoscopes for this week, and I'll see you next week.